So an article was just posted on Wired specifically about Brandon Sanderson, which normally I wouldn't comment on because I'm not a news channel. I don't really talk about current events or current going-ons. I just chat about books. I just hang out and talk about what I'm reading. But this one felt particularly relevant to me because I was just in Utah at Brandon's house, working with him on a project. He was doing a book club for the launch of Tress, and I got to be a part of that. So I was just there, experiencing basically everything that this article chronicled, and having basically the opposite experience. So I wanted to talk about this because this article was very targeted and very personal, and paints Brandon in possibly the least charitable light possible. And I just wanted to talk about my experience with all of the same things and chat about it a little bit. This article was very wordy, so I'm not going to read it to you. I'll just leave it linked in the descriptions, in the description, and maybe put up a couple of screenshots of pieces of it. But this article chronicled this person's experience going to dinner with Brandon and meeting his family, going to events with him, talking to him, having very personal conversations with him, and this person's take on Brandon as a person. So it's interesting because just in February, I was there too. I too saw the stained glass of his favorite novels. I too went into the underground theater and got to experience this awesome thing that he's created and loves to share with people. I met his sister-in-law personal assistant. I met his staff. I got to see the Cosmere house, and I too saw the Elantris guest suite. And he was so excited to just share a piece of his life and his day with us. He's a really busy guy, as the article pointed out. Every moment of his time is slotted for something. He's a hard worker, and he was so excited to carve out some of that time to connect with his readers and to share a piece of his life with us. I had Utah Indian food and sat at the table and asked him a bunch of writing questions as well as personal questions. And it's funny because his staff kind of have this joke that, what's the Spider-Man actor? This guy. You know how in interviews everybody has to slap a hand over his face because he doesn't have a filter. He says more than he should. The staff have a joke that's Sanderson. If you ask him a question, he's gonna give you an answer. He's gonna be honest and he's gonna be excited to talk about it. And that proved extremely true. I talked to him about writing and I talked to him about his books, but I also talked to him about publishing and about authors and about his current ongoing rift with Amazon or dispute with Amazon, and what his plans are going forward, what other things he wants to do. Like, I asked him these questions and he was so excited to talk to me. Whether it be something personal to him, something about writing in general, or something about me, he was excited to hear our stories too, about being readers and what made us fall in love with stories, and not even about his stories, just reading in general. He wanted to hear about our other favorite authors, and he was excited for connection with readers, as well as to answer every question we had for him. And that's exactly what happened in this article. Not only did this writer talk to Sanderson about writing, but he also talked to him about very personal things. He was introduced to Brandon's family, and he went to events with him, and he asked him about his faith and about his tolerance of pain and his experience, how he processes emotions. And Brandon answered openly about all of those things. And that kind of brings me to my qualm with this article, and that's how mean-spirited it was. Imagine being invited into someone's home and being introduced to their family, and when you ask deeply personal questions of them, they openly talk to you about their beliefs and about the way that they interact with the world, the way they process the world around them and process emotions, and how that's not necessarily the same as what most people do. And so much so that those closest to you might lovingly joke that you're an android. And the way you respond to that is by writing a very public article chronicling those things, but twisting them all so that they look sharp and jagged. Imagine being invited into someone's day and them excitedly sharing with you pieces of what they do and who they interact with and what they've built. And your response is to turn around and share it with other people, but shrouded in this air of egotism and sinister intent. Even Sanderson's faith, which the mic drop at the end of this article was saying that he's essentially living out the Mormon dream right now. He's making himself a god right now here on Earth. And it's just the least charitable interpretation of what Sanderson shared with him, which again is very personal. Again, going into someone's life and not having a personal relationship with them and asking them about the unique way that they perceive the world and emotions and their faith, and then just spinning it all in such an uncharitable light. Like, why? Like, why? And that's the thing here. That's the thing, is that this person obviously doesn't like Sanderson's writing, and more power to them. I personally am very open about not being a fan of Sanderson's prose. I talk about it a lot, actually. And a lot of people are not a fan of Sanderson's writing. I have a whole video talking about some of his strengths and some of his commonly cited failings? What do I want to say here? Weaknesses as a writer. And people are very openly critical of him as a writer and as a storyteller. And Sanderson hears this feedback all the time because he's very active on his Reddit and on forums, and he's just happily engaging with readers, both those that have criticisms and those that sing his praise. He's excited to engage with people and has no problem with people not fully connecting or even connecting at all with his work. These criticisms are common, but this wasn't an article talking about Sanderson being a bad writer. Though that stuff was in there, and that part of the article, stellar, great. Break down why you think he's a bad author. If this were an article breaking down why Sanderson is a bad writer, that would be a great article, because not everybody is gonna like Sanderson as a writer. And there's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing wrong with being open about that, there's nothing wrong with talking about that, and there's nothing wrong with writing a really long article explaining all the reasons why you don't understand why he's so popular. But that's not what this article was. There were pieces of that in it, but really this was just a very personal article trying to paint him in the most negative light possible. Taking every piece of every interaction that they had with Sanderson down to encounters with his children and trying to slant it all in this negative light. It wasn't a journalistic article about Sanderson as a writer, positive or negative. It wasn't a personal experience piece about having a really negative interaction with a mean author. It wasn't a journalistic article about business practices or about his intentions for the future or anything. It's not the fact that it's a negative article, it's the fact that it's such a mean-spirited personal one. And on Reddit, where again, Sanderson frequents a lot and loves to engage with his readers, this article has been passed around and Sanderson has commented on it and said, apparently when I shared with this person that I don't feel pain as easily as some people do, this writer decided to try to make me feel as much of it as they could. And I think that boils things down pretty well, because again, this wasn't an article about Sanderson as a writer or about him as a businessman or about what makes him so popular. This was an article where the author of the article took every piece of information they could possibly grasp onto and tried to find a way to put shadows on it, tried to find a way to make it all look sinister, when it's not. Basically, by the author of this article's own words, Sanderson was perfectly pleasant to him. Honestly, this entire article just reads like somebody who went out to Dragonsteel to get the scoop. They wanted to unveil Sanderson and Dragonsteel's seedy underground, and they were pissed off that what they found was a perfectly pleasant person. In fact, someone who's so pleasant that they're boring. It read like someone who dug and dug and dug and dug and dug to try to find something, some sort of dirt, and was really annoyed to find none. So they said, okay, Mormonism. That'll be the villain here, because I gotta have something. Which is unfortunate, because what he's ended up doing is needlessly vilifying someone for the sake of getting the scoop. And that's not journalism. That's just being a jerk for clicks. As I edit this video and get ready to upload it, Sanderson has already written a response, and it was the most charitable response possible. It's long, I'll have it linked as well, but it basically boils down to this person had an article to write and didn't have a story, so this is what he wrote. Don't attack him, don't come after him, treat him like a person. And honestly, this is exactly the kind of response that I would expect out of Sanderson after seeing him online and then meeting him in person. He's truly such a kind-hearted person, and this kind of response from him is very unsurprising. So I still think when this kind of stuff comes up, it's important and good for the community to discuss it if they feel like it, and to be able to talk about appropriate ways to process meeting your hero and them being boring or them being not exactly what you expected, without dehumanizing and belittling them and everybody that they have in their life. So these are good conversations to have, but I do think it's important to have them in the appropriate spaces, not by going after the individual, but maybe discussing them in the comment section of a video or on a Reddit forum or something like that. Brandon handled this very gracefully, and I wouldn't expect anything else from him, honestly. I don't know. It seems like the general reception to this article has been very negative, which one would expect because it's very clearly a targeted article and not one that's trying to share information. So I think it's reasonable that it would be a pretty negative experience, but because this was so personal, I felt like since I was just there, it seemed relevant to kind of share my experience a little bit. I don't think negative commentary on generally popular things and things that I love are in any way a bad thing. But the way this article was written, in my opinion, was quite bad. It was very badly handled. So anyway, I would love to hear your thoughts on it. What did you think? What's your perspective? If you disagree with me, let me know. I post videos every Monday and Friday. I had a video that was supposed to go up this Friday that got bumped, but it'll be on Saturday too. So if you're not interested in this, the standard video will still be up. You just got a bonus. But anyway, I post videos every Monday and Friday on this channel, Tuesdays and Thursdays on my second channel, where you can keep up with what I read week to week. I'll see you again soon. Bye.